Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So there's been a recent article that's come out, and you wouldn't have guessed it, but basically showing how the UN and the WEF, these globalist organizations, are working together with banks to penalize farmers that aren't properly adhering to their communist ESG goals. So what this means is that you could have a farmer here in America that is, say, not giving his cows something to make them fart less, or that's not using enough green energy or whatever it is. And he might then go to his local bank and find that he's been shut out of his bank because he's being penalized by his globalist organization. Now, on the surface, it seems like it's another one of their initiatives to try to make this a better green world. But we know that the green new world they're building is actually a red world, a world that is ruled by communism. And using the excuse of green and saving the planet, we know that they will do anything and everything to control us and to collapse the systems that we need. One of the biggest being our food supply. And so, whether it's been the destruction of the food plants that we saw a lot of last year, specifically in the year and a half or so ago, whether it's that, whether it's the initiatives to like Bill Gates to buy up all the farmland, or what we're seeing with the wildfires and they're wiping out ranchers in Texas. There's been this multi-prong attack on our food supply because they know that of all things, if they can seize control of our food, they have absolute control over us. And joining us today is my good friend Clayton Llewellyn, who is the founder of Heaven's Harvest, who focuses specifically in emergency survival food, seed kits, water purification, or basically a guy who's built an entire business on what it means to be prepared, especially as it relates to food, water, and seed. So folks, please enjoy the interview. Clayton, it is great to finally have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And Seth, thanks for having me.
So today's discussion is food, and not just food, but I think more importantly, the threat to our food supply, how food can become a weapon when the people that are in control of food supply can use it against people, which we've seen countless times throughout history, whether it was the Red Famine or Holodomor or any number of times we've seen that food's been used to control the population. And so you are the founder of Heaven's Harvest, which I've bought a lot of stuff from you guys. It's sitting in my basement area. It's the box of things I don't touch unless I absolutely have to. So you've really got your finger on the pulse as it relates to food supply. And before we get into, give a preview of one article I want to focus on specifically, in addition to some other things about how the UN is secretly working with banks to destroy the American food industry, which sounds alarming but normal these days. I first wanted to see your perspective because you've built a business around helping give people a supply of food for crisis. You're not selling fresh groceries that people are cooking with. You're really helping people get food and seeds that they can really become independent with. And so, one of the big questions that I have is, what have you seen change in this particular industry? Like, how have you seen consumers responding, and what's the thinking behind the people that are coming to you, especially over these past couple of years?
Well, it's funny. Like the reason we started this didn't even have anything to do with like the article you just pulled up, or I mean, it was for no reason like that. And I think 10, 15 years ago, everybody else was on the same page. Speaking of babies, we had just had a baby and it was no longer Clayton has to take care of himself. Now you got a family to take care of. I mean, we were living in Florida at the time. So, when I was worried about a hurricane, we were worried about having enough beer in the refrigerator to have fun. You have a family, now it's a different perspective. Um, Ironically, I was working for farmers in Florida, like the big commercial farmers. And I was listening to your last podcast. To see one of those farms, it is crazy how much chemicals are sprayed on the produce we're eating. I mean, crazy. Like there's a fleet of tractors that just run nonstop, 24/7, spraying produce. So that kind of got us into the heirloom seeds. So in the very beginning, we weren't even concerned about the UN, messing with banks and food shortages. That wasn't even a concern at that time. I mean, the concern at that time was worrying about a hurricane or an earthquake or a tornado. something along those lines. Eating healthier, learning to eat healthier. Because obviously the food we have in our grocery stores is absolute garbage. It's all processed food. So that's kind of where this whole thing started. And I think back when we started, that was most of the people that bought from us. That's what they were worried about. That's what they were concerned with. That's what they were trying to stock up for. And it's, like I always say, like I hope every product I sell never gets used. That's honestly the goal here. But if you need it, you'll have it. And I mean, the farther we get along in this, it's gone from preparing for a hurricane to now preparing for war. So and you can see the mindset changing along with everybody as we go through this. Years ago we talked about eating healthy and growing heirloom seeds in your own garden, and now we're talking about Ukraine and Russia, China and Taiwan, Israel and Gaza. You're talking about um, the protest all over Europe right now, with the farmers over there. So it's completely changed in the last 10, 12 years.
It really has, and it's interesting because you mentioned this, how at one point it was about growing your own food and heirloom seeds, and yeah, that's where it was for me earlier on. It was this excitement of like, wow, I want to be more self sufficient. I want to be able to touch the soil that, so my the all the beautiful bacteria that is interacting with me and the plants, and have that relationship with the food, and it's gone from that, and I don't wanna lose sight of that because that's really a really special thing about growing food and, raising, chickens, etcetera, but it's different. It's now, like, as I look at, reports coming out on what's happening, with the southern border, and actually, Michael Yon, a good friend, he recently put a report, one of his people that are on the ground there, left this really terrifying voicemail with him saying, "Look, he's seeing that the CCP is working with the cartels, bringing troops across the border, and that they're planning some sort of event on American soil." I mean, this is, like, I think we're at a place where I think as Americans, we've always looked at America, especially recently in the past couple of decades, we think that we're almost bulletproof, right? It's like, Rome wasn't gonna fall until it fell, and we have this, normalcy bias to think that, "Oh, that won't happen in America," but all the signs are showing that whether it's the Holodomor or the Mao's Red Guard taking over in the Red Famine or any of these different events that you've seen, we're not immune to that in America, and so for me, it's a lot of it has become not just in trying to enjoy growing food, and I don't wanna lose sight of that, but it's me thinking, "Okay, what happens if I lose access to food for 6 months?
Oh
What
yeah.
happens? Can I feed my family? Can I protect my food supply? Can I secure water? Can I secure energy to power the vitals?" I mean, it's completely different now, the mindset behind this.
No, you're absolutely right. It's funny, and it's almost in this back or backdoor media anymore. It's everything just gets brushed over now. Everything happens so fast. And it's you bring up China. It's like I mean, how many thousands of them have come across the border of military aged men? And we've never had this before. What I mean? Never. We've got spy balloons flying across the country. They're flooding the streets with fentanyl. Have you seen this Glock switch they're sending over here now?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh my gosh, it turns a Glock pistol into a machine gun for like $10. There was just a shooting in Atlanta where at Six Flags where they've got like video recordings of it and you can hear the guns going off in the background. It sounds like a machine gun. I mean, that's a $300 pistol with a $20 part that China's I mean, they're flooding the country with them. Like they're causing this disruption on purpose. We're complicit to it. We're not even, we go about our day to day lives not even worried about it, and they're preparing for war.
And that's the key thing too. We've got a lot of enemies, which we'll talk about, the WEF and the UN and all these people. But I've studied China and the CCP a lot, and if you look at it in their minds, they've been at war with our country for decades. It's not the kind of war that we identify. They're not dropping bombs and bringing troops over and shooting us, but they're absolutely at war. It's just fifth generation. It's unrestricted warfare, and
Yep.
if you look at how war has often been fought, whether you're looking at modern day war or going back into, say Three Kingdoms era in China or ancient Rome, control of the food supply was always one of the number one things that determined who would win a war. If you can cut off your enemy's food supply, if you can starve your enemy's people, that's key. So that's what's really worried me, because I've also studied EMPs a lot, and what happens if an EMP goes off, what happens to our food supply, looking at, how the grocery stores even work, and how it's not like the old days where the grocery store's got a month worth of food. I mean, they're ordering food, by the day basically to keep those stores where they are. And so you're obviously interacting with a lot of customers that are coming to you. What's the mentality of people that are coming? Do you talking to
But
folks, or what are they concerned about now?
yeah, well, it's funny you say that, like, because I don't think a lot of people realize how vulnerable our food system is here in this country. You know what I mean? We're days out on food. Like you said, maybe a month, 2 months, 50 years ago. Today, it's literally days, and we're out of food. I mean, if an EMP were to hit, or our electrical grid in this country, like, a lot of people don't realize how vulnerable our electric grid is. And I can promise you, our enemies know how vulnerable it is. But a handful of guys could shut down the East Coast in minutes, and it would take years to rebuild that. It's we often I often think about this. Like, when we went into World War II, 90% of us still lived on a farm, still grew our own food, still raised our own animals. When we grew up, or below our house was actually a root cellar. You know what I mean? We had a garden. Like, mom and dad every year canned food, stuck it in the root cellar, and we lived on that. I mean, that's how we lived. And within a generation, that's completely gone. We I live out in the country right now, and we get a lot of people that walk in our door, well, we're out here, we can shoot a deer, or we can do this, or we can do that. Like, well, when everybody starts shooting deer, the deer population is not going to be there very long. And the thing is, if the power's out, that 100 pounds of meat is going to last you a week at most. You know, we get a lot of people. I've got freezers full of fish and full of deer and elk and moose. And again, folks, the power's out. Like, how long does that stuff last in a freezer? How many people can even grow a garden anymore? I mean, the simple things to take care of ourselves. Like, even these people that live in rural America don't realize how dependent on the system they are for their everyday survival. So
Not to
a
mention
lot of that.
medicines as well.
Medicines, I mean, all of it. It's just, and I don't want to say we argue with people over that, but there's a lot of pushback. No, I'm fine. I can take care of myself. I can do this. I can do that. But if you really take stock of what you have, most people don't even have the ability to filter water at their house right now. I mean, we can live for a couple of weeks without food. You're only going to live for a couple of days without water. But we're so used to being able to go over there and turn on a tap and have water that we've forgotten how to sterilize water ourselves. I mean, ask how many people they know that you got to boil water if you're going to drink it out of the creek. Like, there's no people don't have ways to store water anymore. It's just it's a completely forgotten. Um, we've forgotten how to survive. You know what I mean? And it's the government has put us in this situation to where they take care of us because they've taken care of us for the last couple of generations. Now they can control us through food, through power, through fuel, through any way they want. They can control us now.
No, they absolutely can, and I think that we've forgotten, but I also think that it's been removed from us. I mean, I think it's part of, there's been a very long-term war being waged on really just the free people of the entire world, and I think a major aspect of that, especially if you look at here in America, the different cultural shifts and bringing women into the workplace, getting them off of out from off of out of the family environment, bring people into the cities, kind of demonizing the farm life and telling these women that, hey, there's instant food now, and I mean all these different campaigns that they went through to really destroy the nuclear family, to pull us off of the land, to get us into the cities, because they know that that's what can control us. And it's the wisdom that I think has also been lost. Because if I think back to my great grandmother that lived through the Great Depression, I remember always going to her house. She didn't have a separate root cellar, but she had a cellar under her house. The walls were lined with canned food, and there was never an instance where she wouldn't have months worth of food that didn't need to be refrigerated, that would last indefinitely. I mean, obviously it can go bad over time, but they've lost that. But also there's just the knowledge of growing food. I think there's a lot of people that think, oh, I've got my survival seed kit, and so if there's a famine, I'll be okay because I've got seeds. And
Yeah.
my wife and I, we've learned some painful lessons on how much food, like how much garden, how many how many truckloads of good soil I had to truck in just to be able to grow good food because our soil was crap where we were before. Not to mention being able to harvest on time, or it's we'd have it's like, oh my goodness, we've had a certain beetle that wiped out our entire cucumber crop this year. I mean, most
Yeah.
people have no idea what it actually takes to not just have like a hobby garden where, I have some fresh tomatoes and some fresh basil for our pasta today, but to actually grow the amount of food and then be able to store it. So growing it's one thing, but then knowing how to can the food, how to store, roots, so, potatoes, or to store your apples, which apple variations are going to actually store and last through the winter. Hey, folks, I've got a quick message for you. So, I'm sure you've heard a lot of people, myself included, talking about the importance of buying precious metals, gold and silver. But what's really behind that? Is just a thing of, hey, buy this gold, buy this silver, right? Or is there something deeper that we should be looking at? So, I recently came across some figures about house prices. So, in 1930, the average family home was approximately $4,000. Fast forward to 2023, the average family home is just over $400,000. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because things have just gotten more expensive? No, it's actually because the dollar has lost 99% of its value since 1930, right? When people talk about the collapse of the dollar or inflation, this is what it means. Now, let's take a look at gold. So in 1930, if you wanted to purchase your home in gold, it would take approximately 200 gold coins. So 200 gold coins would purchase the average family home in 1930, about $4,000. Now, if you, instead of buying a home with that gold or cash, you set those aside, if you set aside $4,000 in cash in 1930, it would be worth $4,000 today. What can you buy with $4,000? Can you buy a family home? No, you can't even buy a crappy used car. But if you set aside $4,000 worth of gold coins in 1930, which is 200 gold coins, 1 ounce coins, that would be worth approximately $400,000 today. And this is the key lesson about precious metals. It's not about getting rich. It's about putting your money into an asset that protects you against inflation and against the destruction of the currency, which is what happens to all fiat currencies, especially now we're in the end days of the dollar. And so that's why it's important, maybe not all of your money, but a portion of your money, a portion of what you have, I highly recommend putting it into precious metals of gold and silver, because what it's doing is it's protecting you. This is an asset that has stood the test of time, not just stood the test of time since the 1930s. We're talking about the rise and fall of civilizations. Gold was used to buy houses back in ancient Rome. It's still around. It's an asset that will forever have its value. So, folks, if you want to do this and you need someone you can trust, there's no person I can recommend more than Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's a very good friend of mine. He's a strong Christian patriot, and he's out to really help people to protect their savings and what you've worked for against the destruction of the dollar, not to mention also protecting it against the dangers of central bank digital currencies. So, to learn more about this, go to goldwithseth.com or call 720-605-3900. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 720-605-3900. Both those places will allow you to set up a quick appointment where you can talk to a wealth advisor that will help get you started on this path. Again, goldwithseth.com, 720-605-3900. And there's so much of this that is really it's become forgotten knowledge. And while I'm encouraged that there's this renaissance and there's this revival of this way of life, it's such a small population that's actually learning how to do these things again.
It's a fraction. We get the same thing all the time. I just don't have time to do it. I don't have time to do it. We've got more free time now than we've ever had in the history of humanity. It's just we've got too much free time. I believe that's part of our problem in this country anymore is we've got too much free time. We got time to protest. We got time to riot. We're not worried about feeding ourselves anymore because half of us are on food stamps. I think that's a big problem with what's going on right now. but it does, it takes practice. This isn't something that you just, this isn't just something that you're going to throw seeds in the ground and they're going to grow. You know what I mean? Like you said, there's all kind of things that can happen. Insects, too much rain, not enough rain. I mean, there's a bunch. It's it's been fun for us too. I don't want to tell you that we were experts the first time we did it either. Last year, I lost an entire crop last year because I put it in the ground too soon. So then I'm
Really?
back trying to sprout seeds in my bedroom, and then it's coming in late. Instead of being able to stagger stuff, we're putting it all in the ground at one time. So when fall rolled around, I try to stagger. Like a couple weeks. Plant a couple this week, a couple next week, a couple the following week. Well, we got froze out last year, so it all went in the ground at the same time. And when fall rolled around, I had more tomatoes than I knew what to do with. I mean, just it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah, we had our painful lessons as well, numerous times. So I'm gonna pull up this article because I want to make sure we touch on this. And I've covered food security for a really, really long time. I mean, I've whether it's again Michael Yon is a person that's an expert on famine and what happens, and I really think that there's a lot of people that look around and say, well, I can still go to the grocery store, I can still buy food, life's pretty normal. And you've been saying that, for the past year and a half that there's going to be food shortages and I can still get the pizza that I like, et cetera. And it's always the case until it isn't. And that's the problem is that, you can buy toilet paper as much as you want at Costco until the day that everyone realizes they need toilet paper and then you can't buy it anymore. And that's my concern about what happens with this. And if you look at all the indicators, and this is just one thing which we'll talk about here, the UN working with the banks, but think about all the food plant explosions that everyone seems to forgot about now. All those plants aren't rebuilt magically; they're out of commission now. All these things that got destroyed. But then looking at this, so this is an article that you'd sent me that really kind of kicked off this interview. This is a Gateway Pundit. UN secretly working with banks to destroy American food industry. It's like, oh, imagine that, a globalist organization working with the globalist banks to destroy local industries that keep us alive. So I'm going to read a few paragraphs in here. It says that there's a new campaign against farmers in which the United Nations works with banks to debank the food producers, closing their accounts and not allowing them to operate their businesses. There's a report from News Addicts which explained officials from 12 U.S. states have sounded an alarm after finding out that the, quote, unelected globalist United Nations is secretly working with banks to destroy the American farming industry. The report explained the banks use the UN's Marxist environmental, social, and corporate governance (ESG) criteria to score and penalize farmers. So they found that the farmers not sufficiently woke, that is, using methods and processes that are not ESG approved, have their accounts shut down without notice. What they say that the report charged, quote, the plot seeks to throttle the agriculture industry to eliminate all those who fail to comply with the globalist net zero agenda of the World Economic Forum, the WEF. It says the actual attack structure works through the UN's Net Zero Banking Alliance, the report explains. So, I mean, to me, this is just one more vector that they're using to attack us. Just one more thing.
Seth, 5 years ago when we talked about this, you could find one instance every few months. It's flooded now with where this is happening all over the world, and it's almost stupidity, but it's being done on purpose. You know what I mean? I know we like to say, I think Henry Kissinger, what do you say? Well, they don't even credit him for saying it anymore, but you control oil, you control nations, you control food, you control the people. Whether he said that or not, it's the truth. And that's what they're aiming for again. The idea here is that we'll shut the farms down, we'll grow all the food in warehouses, completely control what you eat. We'll give you a credit score. If you're not making your credit score, you only get this much food. You didn't do this week, well, then you don't get any of these. Like that's where this is going. You see Bill Gates and all these guys buying up farmland all over the United States. I mean, he's probably in the top 5 landowners now, and they're buying farmland. But it's not just the United States. This is already happening in Europe. I mean, I'm sure you've seen what's going on in the Netherlands. Like, is it a third of the farms they're trying to shut down in the Netherlands? Like, That's crazy. That's huge. You know, Sri Lanka. You saw what they tried doing in Sri Lanka. And now nitrogen is the is causing global warming. Like, I mean, it's one thing after another. Like it's like psychopaths trying to tell the world what to do, and it's working. That's what's scary about it. Like we've got half the population that wants to fall right in line with it and agree with everything they say. So it's this UN article is just another one of those things. It's not I'm not surprised at all when you read this stuff. A few years ago when you saw it, you're shocked and you're sending it to everybody like, oh my gosh, look at this. But these woke scores, I mean, this they're doing it with gun companies. Banks aren't working with gun companies anymore. I and I don't know how I feel about this yet, but it's a lot of these big companies that what are they getting some kind of it's not I don't want to call it a credit score or a woke score, but there's if they don't do enough transgender stuff, they don't get the score they need to market their product. I mean, is this just another thing like that? So I don't believe it's the farmers. It's just it's so crazy anymore. I don't even know where what to believe about it. So, but I mean, it's happening. I mean, it's happening all over the world. These farm policies, Biden has signed us up for the exact same thing. We're worrying about the border now in Russia, so it's not being talked about in the news, but it's coming to the United States. Our I don't know what the exact numbers are, but how much of our national debt is to subsidize farmers? Like I mean, the government controls the farmers. We like to believe that it's mom and pop back there farming these 50,000 acre spots, but it's not. The government controls it. And like I said, with the subsidies that we give the farmers right now, look, Seth, I mean, it can go on forever about this. You know what I mean? We're so far in debt right now. If we have to cut out the subsidies for these farmers, half the population in this country is not going to be able to afford food. I mean, if we had to pay the real cost for food right now, a loaf of bread would cost you $20. You know what I mean? But we're subsidizing farmers and subsidizing corn growers and everybody that we're not even seeing the real cost right now. So like again, it goes. It's like an octopus. There's so many different legs to it. The debt is just we're so far in debt. Like are we've almost got to start a war just to get out of this debt. You know what I mean? And it's the whole world's in debt now. So how do you recover from that? Well, we go to war. We've done that time and time again through the centuries. They need a giant reset. And we've been at war for what 25 years in a row. We've got a little bit of a break, and now we're back at it again. So it's crazy. It's confusing. It doesn't look good. I don't know where we go from here, but they're going to really start to mess with the food system. Like I said, I watched an article once where they were interviewing a lady from North Korea. And they were asking her why there's never uprisings or, why don't you fight back? She goes, because we spent all our time looking for food. We were hungry.
God,
And
that's telling.
this goes back to what I said earlier. Like, I think we've got too much free time on our hand right now. And the elites know that. I mean, you drive around at 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, I don't know about where you live, but I'm always thinking, don't these people have jobs? Like, I mean, is nobody working anymore? I mean, we've become too wealthy of a middle class. I don't think we're too wealthy, but I have a feeling the elites think we're too wealthy. We've got too much free time. We can, like I said, we can riot, we can protest, we can, argue about politics all day, as to where before we were more concerned with, okay, we got to get to work, we got to feed our families, we got to take care of this, we got to take care of that. And it's kind of like they're seeing we've got too much wealth now, so we need to knock them back down.
Yeah.
Let's create some inflation here. Let's drain their pocketbooks again.
Yeah, it's almost like I see there's two different bigger sections of the population. There's the people that are just on government welfare that have unlimited time, and it's actually more profitable for them to collect unemployment and welfare and social security and any number of things that they can get their hands on than it is to work. So you have that half of things. But I think there's also the side of things that the people that are being hit with inflation, they're being hit with the increased taxes, the increased food prices, and you might have a family where mom and dad are both working, more than full time just to barely scrape by. And so they've done it. They've really captured both sides. It's like, okay, we'll give these people free phones and free entertainment, and they're just going to keep collecting and collecting and build a massive welfare state. And for the people that normally would have been the folks that are building businesses and maintaining a household and really becoming, I think, like the backbone of the country. So many of those folks are just, especially the blue collar workers, they're just scrambling. They're scrambling, and they have almost no time. So they're so busy that their way of checking into what's happening in the world is sitting down to Sean Hannity for 20 minutes at night as they drink a beer and try to fall asleep for the day because they're so exhausted. And I
Yep.
think that what's done though is that the vast majority of people in this country, especially, have been pushed into this state where we've lost our self-sufficiency and we've lost our just the as a father and a husband and looking at my children, I feel this responsibility, like I'm thinking these things through. It's like I will not allow myself to get to a day where I watch one of my children starve because I didn't prepare for them. It's like if something happens, whether it's a grid down or it's an attack by the CCP or even some sort of new policy by the globalists and by Biden that kicks off food shortages and potentially famine, if my family can't eat, it's 100% my fault because as the head of the household, I did not do my due diligence to think through, okay, how many months worth of food do I have? What's my food inventory look like? All the things that you and I have talked about.
Yeah. And you know that that's the truth too. 'Cause there's a lot of men now that, don't think like you and I think where, we're gonna take care of our families. Like they don't look past, well, I mean, heck, most of these countries living paycheck to paycheck. Are we really gonna think they're gonna think a month ahead or 2 months ahead or 6 months ahead? Like it doesn't happen anymore, you know? So you were talking about uh what you were just saying there a second ago. I read an article the other day that in 2020, you were talking about the mom and dad working and just, both parents have to work now to support a house. And I read an article the other day that in 2020, a $70,000 a year household was considered middle class. In 2024, that same household needs to make 120,000 a year to be considered middle class. Just to fight inflation and keep up with the times. Like, I mean, it's not doubled, but it's pretty dang close to doubled in 4 years what a family needs to make now to be considered middle class. Like, you can't keep up with it anymore, and they're doing this on purpose. This is to weaken the middle class, weaken America, open the border up, flood the cities with fentanyl. Like, so this is intentionally being done.
Oh, it absolutely is. And what that makes me think is if it's gone from 70,000 to 120 in 4 years, typically these trends don't go like this. They go like this. They hockey stick. So what's it going to be in 4 more years? Is it going to be that you have to make $400,000 to be considered middle class? To me, that's about where the trend lines are pointing to. And which is also interesting because, when COVID first hit, my wife and I, which we've been following these things very closely and listening to people like Mike Adams and people that are very aware of what happens when food systems collapse. And so we went out and we went through a big prepping phase at that point, big trips to Costco, ordering a lot from Azure Standard. And we put away a lot of food, whether it's black beans or and I went and bought 5-gallon buckets. And so most of the dried grains I've got in 5-gallon buckets with oxygen packets and hard red wheat in a wheat mill and everything for creating flour. But even now I look back at that and I look at where the prices are now. Let's just say that we spent $10,000 3 years ago on like some really hardcore food prepping. That same food would now probably cost me between $20 and $25,000. The prices have gone up that much, which is just
If
it's insane.
No, I agree. Look, our food's freeze dried. It's packaged in Mylar bags. Like, I mean, it's made to last 25 years. If you had bought this stuff, 5 or 6 years ago, you could eat off that food cheaper today than you can at the grocery store. Like, that's crazy to think about that. Like it's going up so fast. I don't know what to do with it. And like I said, you see all what they're trying to do to the farmers and all that. It's only going to go up more. This isn't going to stop. And like you said, it doesn't go up like this and flatten off. It's going to continue to go up. But you wonder why they're talking universal basic income for a lot of people. and you've got AI kicking in here now. Like, again, Seth, it goes in so many different directions. You know what I mean? Like this AI, this stuff makes me nervous.
Oh, me
You
too.
know,
Me too.
like this makes me nervous. I mean, what are you going to do if 150 million people? Oh heck, what are you going to do if 25 million people in this country in the next 2 years lose their jobs over AI? And it's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like it. We were talking about it the other day. An attorney can go to law school and pass the bar and spend his whole life working in law, but you can teach a robot in 5 minutes everything about every law, every case, everything, and it knows it instantly. Why would I ever pay an attorney $200 an hour to do this? Like it's crazy. You see the fast food restaurants now that are completely run by AI in California. They can yell and scream they want $20 an hour all they want, but a $10 an hour job shouldn't pay $20 an hour. If you've got an eighth grade education, this is what you end up with. Business owners are going to figure this out. They're put $100,000 into your restaurant AI and machines. Now I don't have to worry about $20 an hour.
Yeah, no one's calling off work. No one's calling in sick. No one's spitting in the food. There's
Yeah,
none of that headache.
yeah. But again, I think this is all part of like the big or the big scam here, the big scheme. You know what I mean? This everything that's being introduced right now is again back to like a universal basic income. We're starting to test the waters now. Let's see who's throwing a fit, who's not throwing a fit. Yeah, it'll work over here. It's probably not going to work there. Just like the COVID. I mean, they've got a real good idea of who's going to take the next shot and who's not going to take it. So I mean, I
Exactly.
think this is all test runs and dry runs for what's about to come. And it's changing so fast that I know they what is the Agenda 2030 and all that stuff. Like they're trying to limit the population of this world. They're not going to come out and tell you that, but they're trying to limit the population of it. So now we've got computers that'll do most of the work of what people will do. We need however many billions of people on this planet anymore. Turns out we don't. So they're not going to come out and tell you they're going to kill half of you off. They're just going to do it slowly.
Exactly. Exactly. So a lot of the folks that are watching, follow what I do and watch the show, they're already well into this journey of putting food away, and they're, a lot of them I've spoken to at different conferences or whatnot, and they say, look, I listen to your podcast, and actually you helped me kind of have the confidence and the courage to sell our little condo and move into the country, and now we're on 3 acres and we're raising chickens. So there's some amazing stories about people being proactive, but I think that one of the areas that I find that I'm consistently learning more, in fact, I can never learn enough, is just the fundamentals of preparedness and learning how to manage your food systems and everything from that perspective. And so, coming from your background, I mean, you're someone that lives and breathes food preparedness. So, what are some pointers that you can give people? If someone comes to you and they say, "Look, Clayton, I've been studying this for a long time. I know what's happening with the UN and the WEF, and my husband has finally said, okay, here's a little bit of money to put towards, preparedness and food supply." And they come to you and how would you guide them? What would you walk them through? What do you recommend for people? I mean, what is there a particular, say, calculation you'd use to say, hey, whether it's 6 months or 12 months, or hey, how much food should people have? What are some pointers that you have for folks?
Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, please do. I love stories.
Like I was telling you earlier, there were kind of two things that got us into this business a couple years ago. We had kids, and that got me maybe three reasons. We had kids, and I realized there was more people to take care of than just myself. I was working on those farms and watching the pesticides being sprayed on all this stuff, thinking, we wonder why we're dying or getting cancer at 30 and dying at 40. Like, I mean, this is it right here. And then the other thing was I had ordered food from another company before I even did any of this. And I won't say who that company was, but it was being promoted as a year's worth of food. And when I got it to my house, I mean, it was just a couple little containers and wasn't a year's worth of food. It was what they had done is nobody regulates serving size in this industry. So they were saying, 365 days out of the year, you need three servings of food. what they failed to tell you that a serving was a tablespoon of rice. Like, well, we know that's not going to work, So really, the calories are the big thing. And it was only, I want to say 4.5 months worth of calories to support me, but I was told it was a year's worth of food. That scares me a little bit because there's a lot of people out there that have bought this stuff that don't have what they think they have. About that same time, we were remodeling a bathroom at our house. And I bought, maybe I shouldn't even say the name, but I'll tell you their tagline is buy it for looks, buy it for life. And I had bought this faucet, stuck it in the bathroom, and about a week later, it was leaking. So I called a buddy of mine over and said, hey, man, like, what did I do wrong here? I'm not a plumber. Like, and he took the faucet off and he goes, you bought this from Lowe's, didn't you? And I said, yeah. He goes, go to the plumbing supply house and buy it. He goes, it'll look like the exact same faucet, but what they sell at Lowe's and what they sell at the supply house are two different things. One of them's filled with plastics on the inside. The other one's has brass parts. And I always laughed from then, and I still think about this occasionally. Buy it for looks, buy it for life. Just don't buy it from Lowe's. You're getting what you pay for. These companies have figured out how to make two different products. One that they can sell in the big box store and one that they can sell at the plumbing supply house that may cost you $100 more, but it's going to last for life. Survival food is the same way. I look at a lot of our competitors all the time. We get people calling us all the time. Well, I can buy a year's worth of food for $200. Like, no, you can't. You know what I mean? I can promise you food's cheaper at the grocery store because it hasn't been freeze dried. It hasn't been packaged in Mylar bags. Go to the grocery store and tell me if you can buy a year's worth of food for $200 because I can promise you another company's not doing that. Like, if they're telling you that, they're lying. A lot of the stuff we get is, people will compare another bucket to one of our buckets. And you start looking at what's inside this bucket, and it's filled with rice and filled with beans. And there's nothing wrong with having rice and beans. Don't buy them from me. Go to Walmart, buy them from there. You know what I mean? There's no sense in paying all that money for rice and beans to put in a bucket. But what they do is they call them filler items in this industry. They fill the buckets up with the rice and beans and make you feel like you're getting something really special. It's not. You know what I mean? Go to Walmart and buy that stuff. Our meals and our buckets are true meals, true entrees. We don't fill them with garbage. We don't put any drink mixes in there. Like, they're true meals. Our organic bucket is, true organic meals. But back to kind of what you were saying there is people ask, how much food do I need? And obviously that depends on a budget. You know what I mean? Because you can't buy enough food or you can't store enough food to last a lifetime. However, I think it's very important to have at least 6 months worth of food. And even if you've got to do it a couple months at a time, I think 6 months is where people need to be. Part of that is, again, we say we don't have enough time anymore to grow a garden or something like that. But if you've got at least 6 months worth of food and a place to plant a garden, that gives you time to get a garden in the ground and get things going. The water filtration and the storage is a huge thing. Like we talked about earlier, you can last 2 weeks without food. You're only going to last a couple of days without water. We've got water bricks on the website. We've got water filtration bottles. And this is all stuff that I've used. Seth, there's nothing I hate more than when you walk into a store and you got 50 different choices. Like, which one do I need? Which one works? Which one doesn't work? Everything on that website is what I personally use in my own home. The water bricks are 3.5 gallon containers. I've tried the 50-gallon drums. Have you ever moved a 50-gallon drum of water?
Impossible.
Sucks. But my 10-year-old can carry a 3.5 gallon jug of water. We can stick it under the bed. We can move them from room to room. They're easy to fill. Water doesn't last forever. So when it comes time to empty them and refill them, I'm not draining 50 gallons of water out in the street. We're dumping 3.5 gallons into the yard. And I'll be honest with you, I don't always keep those things full either. When we were living in Florida, you could see when a hurricane was coming. I called home, tell my wife, fill them up. The water filtration bottles there and all that stuff, the pump to pure. I've looked at these huge systems to filter water. That's that it's not logical. You know, I mean, if you can afford it and you got the room, it's great. But 90% of us live in a suburban area. We don't have the room for this stuff. So all those little bottles right there could save your life. You know, we pay for health insurance and car insurance and house insurance. How many people have left out food insurance?
Folks, perhaps you'd agree with me when I say that over the past 5 years, the mainstream healthcare system's credibility has plummeted. Alternative healthcare systems that aren't beholden to medical consensus or big pharma are on the rise. Sweetamine is time tested and proven to boost your life with better health. It's one of the leading products that helps with inflammation and daily aches and pains. Just because you get older, it doesn't mean that you have to feel old. And folks, did you know that most of the diseases that make people sick and die these days are rooted in chronic inflammation, oftentimes due to glycine deficiency? So, sweetamine is composed mainly of the amino acid glycine, the nutrient that the immune system uses to regulate inflammation. So, with once daily sweetamine, most people feel the reduction in pain after just a few days. So, I challenge you to the 12-day sweetamine challenge to fight inflammation and take control of your health today. So, folks, buy sweetamine online at sweetamine.com or call 855-GET-SWEET. That's 855-438-7933. And make sure you use promo code SETH, SETH, to get a nice discount on your purchase.
You know, and it's one of those things you don't get a second chance to do this. If it gets bad and it gets ugly out, like you don't get to hit a redo or a start over, or if you wreck your car, you don't get to go buy, you know, you can go buy a new car. If you're out of food, you're up the creek without a paddle. You know, you're done at that point. You're standing in a soup line somewhere. You know, and standing in soup lines, I look at what's going on in Gaza right now with those food drops. Like, can you imagine that being in this country? Like, I honestly believe it's coming. Like, we're looking at that. We're looking at that happening in the cities. We're looking at that happening in the suburban areas. Like, waiting on food drops. You know, so it's. But back to you were saying, and I think 6 months is a good start. I know we've really upped ours around our house, especially after COVID. I got really nervous, and I never took food home. I own a food company. You know what I mean? Like, we'll run down there and get some buckets if we need them. 2 years ago was the first time that I actually took the food home myself because it was getting hard to find, and because the price was going up. You know what I mean? It was just every time we made more food, it was another 4 or 5% more than it was the last time. So I mean, we took, I don't know, probably 400 or 500 buckets home. You know, it's, again, I can go off anywhere on this thing, but Seth, I'll tell you what amazed me is we're working with a guy right now that builds bunkers.
Really?
You would be shocked at who we're sending food to. Shocked. You know, and we haven't sent it to these guys, but you can read this in the news. Mark Zuckerberg's building bunkers under his house. Is it, how do you say this guy? Is it RuPaul? You read that article?
No.
The transgender
Oh, yeah.
guy,
RuPaul, I think. Yeah.
like, just came out and said that they're building a massive bunker in Wyoming on their ranch, like
Really?
anticipating a civil war in the country. Like, the elites have already figured this out. I mean, they're dumping their own stocks and their businesses at alarming rates.
Yes.
Like, they're cashing out and they're building bunkers. Not that they need to cash out to build the bunker, but I just don't think they trust where the stock market's at, where the dollar's at. It's coming, and you know, it's middle America is going to be left behind. A lot of people to wake up, but it's alarming at how fast it's going. You know, we all laughed at bricks. Oh, they're never going to do that. Yeah, they're doing it. You know, and if we think inflation is bad right now, wait till that trillions of dollars from overseas that nobody wants to use anymore starts to make its way back to the American shores. We haven't seen inflation yet. Like, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And honestly, I think it needs to get worse before it gets better. I think we're so corrupt as a country. We need a reset.
I agree. Yeah. And to me, the reset is the corrupt infrastructure collapsing, and we have to build something new on the other side, which means we have to survive that process of that infrastructure, because even though it's corrupt, it still feeds us, it protects us, it delivers
Yep.
energy to us. And one thing I wanted to mention, though, that you said is interesting, because I considered, when I was looking for a survival food company to work with, because I had been considering it for quite some time, because it's something I believe in. Like, I don't have a whole lot of affiliates, but if I do, it's thing I believe in. Like, gold and silver, I believe in. Like, I don't have money in the stock market. I'm absolutely 100%. And I remember researching a bunch of the big name food companies. And once I started looking closer, though, you could see, oh, wow, okay, well, they're cheaper. They're the cheapest per calorie, or they're the cheapest per serving. And then you start to see, well, the calories are high because they're including sugary drinks in these, and so you get a little bit of rice and beans and a 500 calorie Kool Aid. It's like, well, that's not what you need if your immune system's already stressed from survival and all that. And it was once I came across you guys, it was just such a natural fit. But you made a good point though, and this is, I think, it's not just about, oh, go buy a bunch of food buckets from Heaven's Harvest. And it's about knowing that your food supply is secure. And the first place that I would always start for anybody is just rice and beans. And it's like, don't go to Heaven's Harvest for that. Go to Costco, go to Sam's Club. That's exactly what we did, right? Like my first thing was not going and buying a bunch of freeze dried food. My first thing was going to Tractor Supply, where you can buy the food grade 5 gallon buckets with the food grade lids. Go there, and we bought a bunch from Missouri Market, hard red wheat, dried beans. I'd go to Costco and I'd buy 300 pounds of rice, right? Where this is 2 or 3 years ago, so you could get 300 pounds of rice for, $150 or, whatever it was. I was buying, 20-pound bags of rice for $11. And so I'd take that, I'd transfer it all into these 5 gallon buckets. I'd throw in a big O2 packet, hammer it shut, and there you go. 25 years that rice is going to sit there. So that's where I'd always start. But with a lot of what you do, and I'll pull the website up again shortly, is it's rounding that out, because I found it was really difficult to figure out, okay, how do we get protein that's going to last? And you can buy canned tuna and stuff. And we bought a freeze dryer, so we have a Harvest Right freeze dryer, and so I've got, we've probably freeze dried maybe 1,000 or 2,000 eggs as an example. Right. So, because we have chickens and we bought way too many chickens because we were stressed out. And we're like, okay, let's get 50 chickens for a family of three. Right. So it's like we had eggs coming out of the cracks. So they're like, what do we do with all of them? And I was water glassing. That's not going to work. There's too many. So we bought a freeze dryer. So I was like, okay, I can get 100 eggs in one batch of freeze dryer. So that was a good solution. Then we had, I kept buying quarter cows and stuff. So we'd start freeze drying beef. And so that was our own way. But there's a whole strategy to it, certainly.
No, there absolutely is. No, and I mean, it sounds like you've really done your homework and your research about that the right way. But man, you just nailed how I tell everybody to do it. You know what I mean? Go to Costco, get your rice and beans. Like what we're selling is the meal. You know what I mean? Add the rice and the beans to these meals. And you don't want to live off of rice and beans, I promise. I know half the world's population lives off of rice and beans, and we can go back to the nitrogen. They're about to put a stop to the rice paddies, but like anytime, everybody listening has been in a stressful situation. You know what I mean? Like everybody's had a bad day at work or a bad day at school, and when you get home and there's a good meal waiting for you, like the worries are gone. You know what I mean? Like that good meal is what we want to provide. You know what I mean? Because if you're in a survival situation, you're going to be stressed. You know what I mean? Like we wanted something that tasted good, that everybody would eat. When we put these together, if my two daughters liked them, they were good for me because they're pretty dang picky. So we changed and altered and moved this and did that and tried this. And, if like I said, if the girls liked them, then they passed the test and we put them in the bucket. But we've gotten rid of the rice and the beans and the drink mixes and all that. Like buy that somewhere else. You don't need that. You know what I mean? You're paying an overinflated price for that. Get that somewhere else. We've got just the meals that you can mix in with the rice and the beans.
You made also a really important point in saying that a lot of people think, I know I've kind of been through this process myself, that, okay, well, if I'm buying food for storage, I can buy cheap food because as long as there's some food, I'm not going to starve to death. And so they'll think that even though maybe they're eating really healthy day to day, but there's this idea that, well, those storage buckets, they aren't really that high quality, but there's still calories. And in a situation where there is no food, I guess that's true. Yes, you're better off having edible cardboard if there is such a thing, or even insect powder. If there's no food at all, you're better off with anything. But I think it's an important point to make, is that if you're in a situation where you need to be tapping into your long-term food storage, your stress levels are going to be very high. You're probably not going to have access to medication or antibiotics in the way that you would normally. There's going to be all kinds of other factors that are really stressing your body physiologically and mentally and emotionally. Like that's the time where you want to be able to pull out organic beef or really good vegetables or a big tub, a big, kind of can of freeze-dried strawberries or, something that's high in vitamin C. That's when you really need to have the highest quality food set aside, not the junk that you can buy. It's like, 'cause I see these, I'm part of all kinds of prepping groups and on Facebook and whatnot, and you'll see them like, "Oh, Costco had, Fruit Loops on sale." So I bought all these Fruit Loops, and you look at these people's supplies, and it's like GMO, pesticide laden, just stuff that I wouldn't feed my dog, right? And of course, I'm not, it's still food, right? But I think that it would be careful about having this mentality that, well, the survival stuff can be whatever is going to give me the calories.
Yeah, that's you know, I did it. I'm guilty of it.
Me
You know what I mean?
too.
I did it. Like, that's why I'm in this business now, because I bought the cheap stuff once, and it's if the day comes and I need it, that's not what I want. That's not what I wanna feed my family. Like I said earlier, the mowing or whoops, buy it for looks, buy it for life, just don't buy it from Lowe's. Like, I see so many people like, "You can buy it at Costco for $30." Like, you're getting $30 worth of stuff. Like, these companies have manipulated these buckets to fit that price range at Costco to sell as many of them as they can. Like, you're getting what you pay for. I know more than once in my life, I've bought something thinking, "Man, I wish I'd have spent the extra $50 and got the good one." And this is for a survival situation. This isn't a you get another chance at it. Like, this is a one and done. If you don't have what you need, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And like I said, when in the beginning when we started this, it was for hurricanes. I was looking for beer. Now that there's a family to take care of, like, sit there and watch your kids starve and let me know how that feels. I mean, it's happening in Gaza today. It's happening all over the world. It happened in Sri Lanka. Like, it's happened in South America. And again, like we said earlier, like, we think that this stuff won't come onto American soil. It's headed this way. It's going to happen here. I can't tell you if it'll happen tomorrow or next month or 10 years from now, but it's going to happen. So I think it's super important to be prepared. And, it's again, the sooner you start the more time you have to do it. When 2020 hit, I'm sure you can only imagine it went crazy. Like, and it was people that we had sold stuff to before in the past, 3 or 4 years earlier. I'm thinking, man, if like we got a food club, you know what I mean? If once a month, just stick a bucket away, stick a bucket away, stick a bucket away. Like, it's one of those things you don't have to think about, But where we're at now, I don't know if you've got a month to a month to a month. You may want to move sooner than later right now.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll pull up the website, just heavensharvest.com. We do have a promo code Seth, SETH. They get 15% off, that's a lot. I mean, a lot of places will give you a 5%, maybe a 10% discount, 15%. So here, for instance, 12-week kit, which is really, it's about $100 a week for a person if you're kind of costing these out. And it's helpful because it's also really important that you know that you can trust the calories on this, and you're not having to independently audit that and find out that you thought you bought 6 months for 3 people and it ends up you've got 3 months for 3 people. We don't want to be in that
Yep.
situation. The other thing that I will also highlight on here is your heirloom seeds, and this is something that is really important to us. And we've created we have a whole probably 30 or 40 gallon tub with all of our seeds organized and packaged and with little mylar packages, and we've taken the seed preservation really seriously. And I've got a couple of your kits as well. And I think that a lot of people, they think that, oh, they can just use the seeds they get from the grocery store. They pull them, dry them out of the tomato. Those aren't heirloom. They're made to not germinate. They will not allow you to have a second year's crop. Whereas everything that you guys do, these are heirlooms. And I love how you even have this seed share kit. And this is the perfect thing. I love this idea that it's here you go. So for those who like to share their seed kit with a friend or family, um, this is a great thing. I also there's people. I'll just throw a kind of caveat to this. There's folks that have thought, what do I do in the situation where there is this collapse, and can I be the person that can turn away a starving neighbor? And yeah, that's a difficult thing to think through. And I hope that we never get to that place. But one thing that I know that Scott Kesterson with Bards FM is really big about this, and I follow him quite a bit, is helping people to gain independence. So even with these little seed share kits, if someone comes to you and you can give them, maybe you're able to give them 5 pounds of rice, but you're able to give them a little seed kit and say, look, here's corn, tomatoes, and potatoes. Get these in the ground. That's one of the best things you can do for people.
We know, and we didn't really talk about that a whole lot, but that's when that became obvious to me. You'll never be able to put enough storable food away to last a lifetime. Never going to happen. I mean, you'd need warehouses full of food, so it's never going to happen. That $139 bucket of seed or that $300 bucket of seed, there's enough seeds in there to last a lifetime of food. And that's a lot of people look at that kit and they think, well, I can buy a bag of seeds. You got time for another story?
Oh, please do. Oh yeah, I'm loving it.
My own father called me last year. My own father called me last year, said, "Hey, can you send me some seeds?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Oh, I ordered some from Amazon, and when they showed up here, there were 4 stinking seeds in the pack." And I went, "Dad, are you serious? Like, your own son owns a seed company, and you went to Amazon?" He goes, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "That's just where I go to shop. Like, could you deliver it? It was $2.99, and they sent it to me the next day, and you got 4 seeds." Like, again, this is the big box stores. You know what I mean? This is what you deal with. Our packs of seeds, there's 500 to 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 seeds in those packs. Like, they are loaded up. That is not what you're going to buy at your local hardware store. They're in Mylar bags. They're not coming in paper bags. If you want to drop a bucket in the freezer, most of the seeds in there will last up to 10 years if you leave them in the freezer. Again, that's security. That's safety. You know what I mean? Like, that's for $139. It's something you can throw in there and it's there. Every 4 or 5 years, get you a new bucket just to be safe. And like I said, there's that share kit. These aren't the seed bags you buy at the hardware store. These are Mylar bags that are made to last. They'll protect against, radiation and all that. They protect against moisture, and there's plenty in there to split up among your family. And you could probably split that bucket up 10 different ways, to be honest with you, and still have more seeds than you're going to buy in individual packs at the local hardware store. So, but that bucket of seed is a lifetime of food. I mean, it's literally a lifetime of food. Every one of those seeds you can reharvest from the crops, dry them out, and use them again the following year. So that bucket could multiply to 100 pounds worth of seeds off of just what's in that bucket. So
Yeah.
that's really important. I'll tell you what, like, I know, like I said, I was listening to your last podcast. Go to a commercial farm and see what you're eating. You'll quit going to the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly. And you make a good point though too, is that one of those seed kits after some years of being grown and then harvesting the seeds, you could feed a village off of that. And it's what God's given us. God's given us so much bounty in food. It's amazing to see that you grow one thing and one plant, whatever it is, and you look at all the seeds you can pull off of that. You can grow 100 plants the next year. You can grow 5,000 the next year, 50,000. I mean, it's amazing how this multiplies, but there's a lot of knowledge, even knowing how to preserve seeds, how to store seeds, how to germinate them properly. Like, those Amazon 4 seeds that your dad got. If he's lucky, 2 will germinate. If he's lucky, of those 2 that germinate, that one of them will actually survive to being a real plant. And if he's lucky, it'll actually bring fruit and harvest fruit or vegetable at the end of its that season. I mean, it's yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's the truth too. And I'll tell you what's funny is we get a lot of people that are learning to do this. You know what I mean? That they're good. Again, they've heard us talk, and and I'm really, it's really cool. Like, this generation, like Generation X and Z, and like, we've thought of them as like a worthless generation, and they have shown more interest in learning to grow their own stuff, learning to take care of themselves than the last 2 generations. So I mean, we're dealing with a lot of that stuff, and it's crazy because I mean they've completely grown up on GMOs and hybrids. You know, that's all they know. And they start planting these heirlooms, and we'll get calls back like a tomato, like this is what a tomato really tastes like. You know what I mean? Like this is what a pepper really tastes like. Like the stuff you're buying in the grocery store are hybrids or GMOs. Like they're made to look great big and red. They may not taste like anything, but they look real pretty sitting on the shelf. You know, and they grow an heirloom tomato, and it's like kind of weird looking. And oh, this isn't what a tomato looks like. I promise you, that's what a tomato is supposed to look like. Give it a try. And I mean,
Exactly.
it's the phone calls you get. Man, I can't believe it tastes like the corn is crazy. Like cantaloupe, holy cow! You know the like. I don't need ranch dressing all over this stuff to eat it. Like it actually tastes like something without dressing. Like yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So
It is.
it can tell you, man, if you got a family, like that's what's been really cool. Is getting the girls back, like teaching the girls this stuff along the way. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of the kids they go to school with like have no idea where their food comes from. No idea. So I mean, to be able to teach them that and teach me that, you know, we grew up with it and I forgot it for 20 years. So I'm learning it again too. But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of my favorite memories is, last kind of summer, fall time, my little daughter who was, 2.5 to 3 at that time, seeing her just 'cause we had, berries everywhere, blueberry bushes and raspberries and strawberries. We had I think we bought like 400 strawberry plants. I mean, we kind of we got, just like the root the bare roots, but just seeing her just scour the garden. She comes back and she's just covered in strawberries, and she's got strawberries everywhere and blueberries everywhere, and her face is stained, but she's just the happiest thing ever. And that's the it's actually it's a beautiful thing. I've
Yeah.
found that with her, even if I get her to help pack her lunch for, her little gymnastics class or whatever it is, that when she gets involved in it, she loves it and she wants to eat it and she wants to participate. And so, planting and harvesting and, "Hey, let's go pick a bunch of, tomatoes, or let's go dig up potatoes." That was one of her favorite things to do, is dig up potatoes, and she's in these big holes covered in dirt, finding potatoes, and it's just precious. There is so much joy in it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'll tell you what, it's the change of subject here real quick. The a lot of this stuff we're talking about, harvesting seeds and canning and all those books on that site too are I'd like to tell you
Oh,
I read
okay.
them, but I just looked at the pictures, but my wife read them. She's a reader, and those are all books that she has preferred, that are the easy, like the square foot gardening and all that. I mean, if you're in a suburban area, that's a great book for learning how to utilize space.
Oh, that book helped us a lot, Square Foot Gardening.
But those are the books and again, we didn't want to put 10 books of the exact same thing on there. Those are the books that have helped us out the most. You know, so we've gotten rid of the kind of one book for each category. You know, and they're the best ones we found and that we use the most.
Oh, great. Great. Well,
Think
Clayton, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. I'll remind folks, and I'll put the links in the description, but it's heavensharvest.com, and using promo code Seth, SETH, you get 15% off. And I couldn't agree more too with that 6 month idea, that make that the goal. Obviously, if you can have a year or 2 years, great. And if folks can only afford a month or 3 months, they're still better off than probably 98% of the population. Just to get to that place. So I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for standing behind what you're providing with people. I personally know it's great food. It tastes good. It's quality, and it's great having. I look forward to you coming back on. Actually, it's real fun to talk to you, and it gives me an excuse to wear my flannel for a show, which I always appreciate.
and we didn't do this on purpose either. It just worked out that way.
It did. It did. Well, Clayton, take care, man. God bless, and just enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be in touch. Thank you for coming on.
Definitely, I appreciate it. Thank you.